Hey everyone, welcome to episode 10 of Food Culture Curious. For this week's episode, my friend and registered dietitian Yenlynn Banh and I met up at a Vietnamese restaurant and discussed all about her food culture as well as her perspective on nutrition care for the Vietnamese population. Keep listening to learn more. Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. My name is Areli. I'm a registered dietitian on a mission to help healthcare practitioners become more culturally competent with their nutrition recommendations. Today with me I have my friend Yenlynn Banh. She's a registered dietitian currently working in the outpatient space, and she's going to talk to us about her Vietnamese food culture. Welcome, Yenlynn.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So Yenlynn was actually an intern of mine a few years ago, and it's awesome to see her now in her RD job, just kicking butt. And thank you for making the time to talk to us about your food culture. So we'll get right into it. What food cultures do you identify with?
I identify with the Vietnamese food culture. My parents are both from Vietnam, but I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and so I do also identify with American food cultures as well.
Awesome. So as far as your Vietnamese food culture, can you tell us a little bit about typical foods growing up, protein, starches, and produce?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and this is just from like my own home cooked meals.
Yeah.
But usually, I think with typical Vietnamese household meals, we usually have some sort of starch, which I think for the most part is gonna be rice, maybe sometimes noodles. In terms of like the protein, it might be beef, might be pork. One really popular dish is called like thịt kho. I know over social media it's kind of been popular too, but basically it's like braised pork with like eggs or quail eggs. So you might have that as like your protein, and then for the vegetable dish, it could be like a vegetable stir fry, or we might have something called gan, and it's like a vegetable soup that we have on the side. Um, with my own family, that's usually what we'll have, but I know other families may also have like fresh vegetables, like sliced up cucumbers or like tomatoes too.
Okay, awesome. So her and I actually just went to a Vietnamese restaurant and we had a couple of different dishes and she told me a little bit about the foods there. So if it's okay, can we talk a little bit about those foods?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So one of the things that you ordered was a salty lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so the salty lemonade is called chan mui, and it's basically lemonade with like literally like salt that's like put in there. And so yeah, it's like one of like the refreshing drinks that you might have. Some other common drinks might be like fresh coconut juice, which I know I have some family members who really like it. I personally don't like coconut, so I always go for like the chan mui. But yeah, we do have like a couple of I guess you could say like Vietnamese like drinks that is always kind of like on the menu at typical Vietnamese restaurants.
Yeah, for sure. I think I always see the Vietnamese coffee, which is so strong and delicious.
Yes, yes, it is really strong.
And then as far as the dishes that we had while we were there, the one that I ordered had a rice cake. Can you talk a little bit about that dish?
Yeah. So it's actually like rice noodles. And I think the one that you ordered, it was like a wider kind of rice noodle, and they fry it in like a wok so that it's like really crispy, and then it's kind of molded into a cake-like kind of form, and then they top it with like your stir-fry vegetables. Yeah. So it's in a cake-like form, but it's actually like rice noodles that they use.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever had anything like it. It was good.
Yeah, and it has like you could do it with like vegetables, you could do it with seafood, which was what you had, and then you could also do it with like beef or chicken too.
Yeah. So I know you got something and it had like was it a pork cutlet and it had egg on top? Tell me a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so that one was called like gum thum, and with that one you have your rice, but the I guess you could say like the special part of it is like that rice. It's actually called like a broken rice or like a fractured like rice grain, and so it's not like a whole rice grain. It's fractured, and then with that you usually have your pork chops. You have the egg or like pork kind of um, cake, if you will, where it's like steamed and there's like vermicelli noodles, mushrooms, and it's topped with like an egg yolk, and you steam it. So there was that, and then you sometimes have it with like an egg on top, shredded pork. Some people they have it with like um, sausage too, if you like it or if you like to have that. And it's usually served with pickled vegetables on the side and a fish sauce.
Awesome. Awesome. So you already mentioned a few different techniques and flavors. Can you elaborate a little bit more about spices and cooking methods in the Vietnamese food culture?
Yeah. So with the spices, I know at least like at home with like my family, my mom she typically uses like fish sauce, oyster sauce, sesame oil. There's like something called hoisin sauce too. We also, of course, have like sriracha that we use. So those are like the typical like sauces that is used in our cooking. In terms of like the methods of cooking, stir fry is really popular. I mean, there's steamed, there's boiled. So all kinds of like cooking methods that you could use. Grilling. It just depends on like the dish.
Awesome. Is there any cultural holidays that your family celebrates, that you do special types of foods? Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah. So I think one of the most famous ones is Tet, or like Lunar New Year, and is usually celebrated in February. And with that, the one food that really comes to mind for me is something called bánh trung thu. No, no, not bánh trung thu. I'm sorry, bánh trưng or like bánh tét. And that's like a green, kind of like rice cake that we have. I think that's what it's called. Bánh trưng or like bánh tét, and it's like a green sticky rice cake. It's usually cooked in like a banana leaf, so it's like wrapped around. They use like banana leaf to kind of wrap it around and like mold it, and then I believe it's usually steamed. But that one comes to mind because my family usually gift each other like bánh trưng or bánh tét for like New Year's.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we also have like pickled vegetables with that as well.
Cool. And you said that's for the Lunar New Year.
That's for the Lunar New Year. And we do also have Tết Trung Thu. So that's the, I want to say it's the autumn, mid-autumn festival. And with that one, we have the moon cakes that we usually gift each other.
What are moon cakes made out of? Is it similar?
So they're made out of it's different. The filling is always different. We have like mung bean with like a salted egg in the middle. There's a lot of different flavors, but the one that comes to mind right now is mung bean because that's my favorite one. But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with us about the food culture side. So now, if it's okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about the nutrition side of things. We are both registered dietitians. So what do you feel are some major nutrition care challenges that the Vietnamese population faces?
I think the one that comes to mind is probably like translation and interpretation of certain like nutrition terms, and even like with medical terms too. Especially if you're trying to teach, let's say, the nutrition food label. There may be, patients who, English isn't their first language, and so they may recognize, salt as mui, which is like the direct translation of it in our language. But let's say you're trying to teach the nutrition food label, and on there it says sodium. So they may not recognize that sodium is actually what they want to look for, like salt. So I think like in terms of like the translation and interpretation, it is like still a challenge. And I think that with our patients, our Vietnamese patients, there might there may be a need for more like reinforcement on that end.
It sounds like the need for clarification on certain things. Language can be such a difficult barrier, even if you're speaking the same language. Like cultures use different words to mean different things. So you might have a Puerto Rican that calls beans, habichuelas, versus a Mexican calls it frijoles, or there's always that challenge in interpreting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another one that also comes up is I think in our culture, some people they there is that belief of like herbal medicine to help cure like cancer, help cure diabetes. And so we do have to take that into consideration whenever we are helping those patients and giving them that education, because they do like some people, they do genuinely believe that that certain type of herb or that certain type of vegetable will help bring their blood sugar down or will like help cure them of it. Even though like as dietitians we know it's about carb controlling and all that, but there is that aspect too of being like just respectful if they want to use certain like herbs in like their health care.
Right, exactly. I feel that happens in a lot of cultures. Like we grew up with thinking or being told certain herbs solve certain ailments. And I mean, it could be there's a relationship there, and that's why it's been happening for generations. But the research maybe hasn't caught up to it, or something else might be going on. But but like you said, always to be respectful that we're including those traditions whilst they're addressing their issues in other ways.
Yeah.
Have you had any instances where that's happened? And can you think of a time where like you were able to help with that?
Yeah, so I mean, thinking of like my family, so like even like my uncles or like my aunts, some of them they do have like higher blood sugars, and um, they do believe that bitter melon, I think that's what's it called in like English, bitter melon or kawa, um, it's it can help bring down like the blood sugar. And then I know that with my uncle, he does also believe that there is this plant that you can make a tea out of. So the leaves, like you make a tea out of it and you drink it, and it can help bring down your blood sugar like a lot. So I have seen it where like he'll drink that and he'll say like, oh yeah, my blood sugar is a lot better with it. And I think um, with that with that sort of belief, you just kind of have to also encourage like, oh yeah, but also watch your carb intake and just kind of keep reinforcing that. And I mean, this is something that me and you had talked about earlier in the restaurant too. Yeah. But I think people will change, or they'll kind of make changes to their dietary habits when they feel ready to.
Exactly.
So it may be for him that at that point he wants to try the tea and that's what he believes in, but you keep offering like that education, kind of keep reinforcing it for him, and then whenever he feels ready to, okay, let me switch out my white rice for brown rice, or like something else, he'll make that change when he's ready.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Awesome. So I know right now you're in the outpatient setting. When you have a Vietnamese patient and they come in with like, let's say, diabetes, is there anything that you modify for them?
Yeah, so I think it is going to be like that starch intake, and also it's really important to recognize what is the starches that are commonly used for them, in their diet. So like maybe for us, it's going to be tapioca starch, or it's the rice that we have, or let them know that yes, you are having vermicelli noodles, but it's still noodles, it's still carbs, or teaching them that your noodles and pho is rice noodles, so it comes from rice still, which you still got to count as carbs. So it's still like that carbohydrate part that I teach, but being more specific with like actual like food, certain food items in like the Vietnamese culture.
Yeah. Awesome, perfect. We can always bring something a little bit more tailored to our population when we get to work with them. That's the great thing about seeing dietetics diversify even more, is we're able to address those populations. Unfortunately, there's not enough of us, and a lot of work has to be done, and that's the main reason I started this podcast. So someone who maybe isn't Vietnamese but has a Vietnamese patient can just take like little tips from us to just help them a little bit better. Is there any other advice that you would give for someone working with the Vietnamese population?
In terms of advice, I don't know if there's like a specific advice I would give for the Vietnamese population. I guess like with me working outpatient, I do see this in just like general like like outpatient population, but sometimes you can't force a change. You got to be patient, and with with patients who do have that language barrier, you got to be extra patient with them, and you got to work with them even more. And it's again like that reinforcement, and keep just working with them and explaining to them like what needs to be done to help with like their healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, we did mention that in the restaurant that working with the adult population, these are grown people that make their own decisions, and sometimes as dietitians we get attached if they don't make the behavior changes we feel like would be good for them, and just have to, like you said, be patient and reinforce until they're ready to do it on their own. If you have any other you would like to share as far as just being a Vietnamese dietitian.
I think that I mean, for me at least, I just really enjoy being a dietitian, and I'm glad that I am seeing more, I guess you say, like a diverse population in our dietetics field. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I think throughout like the past year, so I've met a lot more like dietitians who come from like different backgrounds, and I think that's really cool. So I do hope that that continues to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of fun interviewing, dietitians of different cultures, and I've started following a lot more. I never used to really follow dietitians on Instagram because I would think, well, I'm not, trying to reach a specific health goal like with diabetes or hypertension. But the more dietitians of different cultures that I follow, I feel like I pick up a lot more nuances as far as just improving cultural competence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about your Vietnamese food culture. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It was really fun to be here.
Thank you. And now for a quick disclaimer. Food Culture Curious is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not take the place of medical advice from licensed healthcare professionals. If you need to seek medical advice, please speak to your healthcare provider. Thank you for listening.